All right, I was asked by math professor Joe Mazer, or he commented, I'm trying to understand how algebra is linked to time. Algebra can exist without time, but music cannot. And then he recently posted an article on his Psychology Today column about brain synchronization, treating various conditions using brain entrainment. And so I was reading up on those latest research. And so this reminded me of math professor Luke Hoffman on algebra as time. So Luke Hoffman's paper derives the square root of -1 as a iteration of 1 and -1. So he says that when you have this, you have an inherent asymmetric time shift, or as he says, it takes a little time to oscillate. In other words, to make a measurement of velocity takes time inherently. And so therefore, they get out of phase. The numbers inherently in the algebra become out of phase. And that's how you derive I squared equals -1 due to this inherent ambiguity of I as +1 or -1. So the reason why this is a key point, or this is also called quantum logic, that I'll be getting into. So with these brain entrainment studies, they talk about sub and super harmonics, but they don't realize they're relying on when they say harmonics, they're relying on the commutative symmetric geometry. And so there's this quote, in keeping with this, experimental evidence of higher order entrainment to brain stimulation is so far limited to the most stable higher order ratios, such as 1:2, 2:1, 3:1, and 4:1. Now they reverse the ratio here, 2:1 and 1:2, but they don't realize that in fact these harmonic ratios originate from the noncommutative time frequency, so that 3:1 and 1:3 are actually noncommutative in terms of the entrainment of music as pitch. So if you're listening to the source of the sound, then you get a different value of the 3. So 3:1 would be G to C, and then 1:3 would be C to F. And that makes them non-commutative, so that the direction has an inherent time shift, just like up here the phase changes when you have that second time shift. And that's why you get a different pitch in relation to the 1. So if you had just a 0 to 1 wave, and then you go to 2/3 as a perfect fifth, which is the next harmonic, the super harmonic is 2/3. But then the wavelength is 3/2, which is larger than the original frequency of 0 to 1, or the wavelength of 0 to 1. So you have this inherent complementary opposites where it's non-commutative. And And the only way to make a symmetric ratio is to double the octave and then to change the value of the 1 as the root tonic. And so that this is what Alain Kahn calls 2-3 infinity. So I had sent Professor Mazur just this follow-up from our original correspondence 15 years ago. I wrote this a couple years ago. However, even in this case, there's a highly non-commutative world. This can be used to capture the geometry of rotations like those appearing in the classical Pythagorean octave versus perfect fifth considerations. So the Pythagorean tetractys is this 1, 2, 3, 4. So inherent in that is this non-commutative quantum resonance that inherently has this ambiguity from the -1 and 1, or you could say, 2/3 versus 3/2 being less than 1 or greater than 1. And so then I quote, I forward him what I sent to math professor Steve Strogatz. The F is actually the perfect fifth in the scale, not the Fa as the perfect fourth. In other words, you're starting from the perfect fifth below the root tonic. Okay, so I was just correcting him on that difference in the Here Comes the Bride. And so I'm refer to math professor Michio Durdovich in the book The Musical Mathematical Mind that I just cited, and then I go into he's relying on Alain Kahn. So then when we refer to Alain Kahn's lecture on music of the quantum sphere, he's talking about the shape of a certain number of notes as a universal scaling system. And so then you have this non-commutative chords of 2 notes. And then he explains this as what he calls 2-3 infinity as factorization. So you have 2 to the 19th and 3 to the 12th. And he says that this actually is a geometric dimension of 0 because it's smaller than any positive number. And then it's also non-commutative, so it's the equivalent of the quantum sphere. And he says that this is the spectrum of the Dirac operator for the Dirac spinner. And so essentially the reason it's non-commutative is then when you put it back into the same octave, then you have 2 to the 1/12th and 3 to the 1/19th. Instead of up here, you have 2 to the 19th and 3 to the 12th. So the exponentials are non-commutative. And this is the same secret of the square root of -1, because you're relying on this non-commutative ratio as division, just as the exponential is non-commutative. In other words, it's a rational discrete time shift as the phase difference. And that's the secret source of the irrational real numbers. And so Alain Kahn is emphasizing that this is more dense than the space-time continuum that's defined by the real numbers of commutative geometry. So then this gets us back into the collaborator of Lou Kaufman, who was Eddie Oceans, and he wrote an article on this same thing that Alain Kahn focuses on, which is the spectral noncommutative spectral analysis that Heisenberg first discovered, but he's applying it to psychology. And so he's pointing out that if you have a statement that in quantum logic, it can be true that the statement A is true or false without statement A being true or statement A being false. And so what this means is that it's neither A nor not A. You don't know if it's neither A nor not A because it's non-commutative. And so he's saying that you have the non-commutative exponentials in the matrices, and his point is that when you're using the Dirac matrices, the vectors are rays, which means they are a class of vectors that are defined by this non-commutative square root of -1 as the phase difference. So the phase difference is precisely that imaginary number as the phase shift in time. And that's the inherent origin of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle of momentum and position. So he's saying that due to the quantum logic, there's this fundamental ambiguity to observations of external reality. And there's no way to operationally distinguish between A, B, and C. And that's another way of saying non-locality. So that there's this inherent non-locality in the process of time as the algebra, as the logic of the algebra that Lou Kaufman. So once again, the rule of thumb for when the law of coherence of quantum logic applies is that it will apply if, quote, A or not A is true does not require that A is true, nor that not A is true. So it's neither A nor not A. At the same time, because you don't know which one it is. Now, just as a side note, he uses this example of if somebody identified with the Virgin Mary, if they say, well, as a female or anybody, they say, well, I'm a virgin, and the mother of God was also a virgin, and therefore I'm the mother of God. Now, so this is an example of what would be incorrect logic, but he also says that that's primitive, that would be. Piaget tried to argue that non-Western cultures have that same kind of logic. So what this inherent ambiguity then is resolved by what Eddie Ocean says is what he practices Wing Chun, the non-Western. He called it like analog. You have an analog body motion that he called self-referential motion. And so that he said that, Wing Chun is an example of Neigong. And so the internal martial arts of Neigong actually resolved this, what would otherwise be a double bind in the Western logic that would create a mind-body problem. And so what's interesting here is if we consider the Western saint of Saint Joseph de Cupertino, he identified with the Virgin Mary, and he worshipped the Mother of God as his personal. He identified with in terms of when he would see her image, he would start levitating, and he considered his own virginity to be the secret to the truth of finding God, And so he would always have to look at an image of her, but then when he would send his mind into what they call ecstasy, but his mind and his body would be completely oblivious to external reality, and then he would start levitating. So I'm just pointing out that you have this example where what we consider to be primitive logic actually accesses this paranormal quantum logic level, and then the person who ran the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center and hired Eddie Oceans, he had developed the same physics based on the same ambiguity of the imaginary number as the square root of -1. And he says that this is the secret of, Richard Feynman describing a particle moving backward in time as the same as an antiparticle moving forward in time. So again, you have this, if you're able to use the imaginary number as the phase change to then cancel out that difference of the negative energy. But what Basil J. Hiley's big point is that this -1 is actually the negative frequency and time reversed signal as non-locality. So it's a new quality of energy that's before you square the amplitude to create the particle or to measure the particle's momentum. So it all comes back to this use of the square root of 1 to define a particle as moving backwards in time, and then to say that it's just a virtual particle and it never exists in reality. But in fact, there's already been several experiments that have created real photons out of virtual photons, and this would be the dynamical Casimir experiments and also the Archimedes screw experiment that use these, that use the concept of negative frequency. So Sir John Pendry is relying on negative frequency, and this is also the key to how meditation works, as explained by Lawrence Dolmash. He was a quantum physics professor at Hampshire College, and he's saying that you have this same non-commutative resonance in the brain, and that's able to directly access the virtual photons and then turn it into real energy, to convert it into real photons by reversing the time phase directly. And Eddie Oceans, that he wanted to test for that using a squid. he thought you could maybe use a squid device to actually test the brain for that change. So now I sent Professor Chris Knight a email that's what Eddie Oceans argued about the quantum logic is actually the origin of human language, because you have this double bind in the origin of human language, where you have the female sex strike using menstruation to signal that there's no sex unless the males go out hunting for long distance hunting and bring back food, bring back meat. And this happened through the lunar synchronization of the female menstruation. So you have this double bind in the signal system, and that immediately turns it into be a virtual symbolic domain that's disconnected, because it's the double bind. It's this ambiguity, once again, between the two classes of logic. It's neither a nor not a, and since you can't say which it is, it's actually transcends it into this pure time, realm of pure time that they call the re-entry into first creation. And then Professor Chris Knight, he literally says, it's originally female, and it's a motherly energy, based on this. So we can see how, once again, this is equivalent to that, Virgin Mary origin of energy, that they originally called it ngom energy. So the way that, in other words, Professor Knight, he's saying you have to have this ritual in order to develop human speech. The human speech is low cost, but it inherently has these logical paradoxes that are then resolved through the healing, the spiritual healing training that is the core of the original human culture. So the males are required to dance all night long while the females are singing, and that's done during the new moon or the full moon, and then during the new moon the males are out hunting. They have to go out, and so this explains the origin of human language itself. But since we lost connection to that original ritual, which is the same as this Neigong training that Eddie Oceans says is the key to quantum psychology, is if you do this self-referential motion that literally has the Tai Chi is based on the Dirac dance that is the spinner that explains the spinner. In other words, you have a 1/2 quantum. I'm going to try to find it. I have it in my blog. But the 1/2 quantum is the nonlocal 1/2 spin. So if we go over to my blog here, so this is the Dirac dance. So you have the outside of the hand is yang and the lower body is yin. So you can see her yang goes against her yin. And then the upper body is yang and the inside of the hand is yin. So it's facing the upper body. So then you have that same thing here. You have the yang and the yin with the upper and the lower body. So this goes back to the origin of human language and also the origin of the virtual particles being transformed into real energy through this secret of the future and the past overlapping. And it's also the key of why time inherently has this motion, eternal motion to it that Alan Khan calls the infinity of infinite dimensions. And based on this factorization, very simple factorization that he says is it's an overall motion that it will always be in motion due to the limit of our observations, because again it takes time to make an observation, an external visual observation, but listening can be done faster than the Fourier uncertainty of time and frequency. So we can harmonize directly with the future and the past through meditation as listening. Because of the 2 and the 3 go in the opposite directions of the future and the past, we can harmonize with the subharmonic and the superharmonic at the same time. To get back to the Joe Mazer article, about the pineal gland, photosensitivity, and then brain oscillations, frequency of light and sound. So it doesn't address at all the secret of noncommutative resonance, and nor does it address why algebra is inherently has this time shift to it in the algebra. But this is what Alan Khan explains is going on. And also Lou Kaufman, math professor Lou Kaufman. And so because this ancient logic got covered up, then the commutative geometry is, as math professor Luigi Borzacchini explains, it's the traditional non-quantum logic, the classical logic is deep, what he calls a, quote, deep pre-established disharmony as the, quote, evolutive guiding principle of science. And this is also called the music logarithmic spiral, that's secretly guiding the quote evolution of technology, but it's increasing the entropy on Earth because it's originally discovered, it's recently discovered that the quantum entropy as entanglement is defined by the surface area, just as the black hole entropy is defined by the surface area of the quantum information. And so, in other words, this process of information as pure number is what Roger Penrose calls proto-consciousness. And so you have the two-dimensional ambiguity of the phase shift then creates 4D space-time. And so that what is considered observer relative in general relativity is actually a superluminal signal in quantum physics as a quantum geometry, because it's the secret of the relativistic quantum physics is this nonlocal quantum potential of the future and the past overlapping. And so it's, in other words, at each 0 point in space-time, you already have this two-dimensional time process as what Lou Kaufman calls primordial time and Roger Penrose calls fundamental time, and Alon Khan calls primitive time. And so this undermines the primitive causality of relativity, because it shows that before there's a symmetric rest frame, you already have this time shift asymmetry as an infinity of infinite dimensions, as a factorization process that then creates this 2-3 infinity as the inherent factorization from the one. Or you could call it the undifferentiated triad, which is what Ramana Maharshi called it, the undifferentiated triad, as the secret of non-dualism for meditation. So it's like the secret of the Holy Mary, Mother of God, is the emptiness or the cosmic mother as a paron that causes anti-gravity for the levitation of Saint Joseph de Cupertino, and that's what completes the Trinity. In the secret of the Logos is what completes the Trinity. To quote Marian Hiller's book, From Logos to Trinity. So you have this secret connection behind science is the same secret connection behind religion, is through this cosmic mother. The cosmic mother who will never be unveiled is this secret of time that cannot be seen, but it's in the quantum logic of the algebra. So there you go.